Welcome back. Welcome to another tour. Today's tour is Wings Over Val. Today's flight takes us back to September 1944 during one of the most ambitious and daring Allied operations of World War II, Operation Market Garden. It was the largest airborne operation in history, involving over 34,000 paratroopers dropped into enemy territory with a singular goal: secure a corridor from the Belgian border to the Lower Rhine at Arnhem, and the hope to end the war by Christmas. The risk was immense. Our journey will follow the path of the 82nd Airborne Division, the 101st Airborne Division, and the British XXX Corps as they fought to seize a critical series of bridges in the Netherlands, among them the infamous bridge at Nijmegen, and beyond it, the bridge too far at Arnhem. If this is your first time here, what we do at Dude Tours is we find interesting places or historical locations in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and we talk about the events that took place there.
Meanwhile, from secret airfields in England, a huge air army is thundering into the sky. Here in momentous flight is a long-planned Allied strategy. 3 waves of more than 2,000 aircraft heading east for Holland. 1 wave is directed to Eindhoven, 1 to Nijmegen, and 1 to Arnhem. Their mission is to get behind the enemy's water defenses, roll up the German right flank, and join the ground armies at the gateway to Germany.
Today, we start our tour here at RAF Spanho. It's located in Northamptonshire, England. It played a vital role during Operation Market Garden in September of 1944 as a launch point for airborne operations. Home to the U.S. 315th Troop Carrier Group, Spanho's airstrips bustled with activity as C-47 Skytrains loaded with paratroopers and gliders prepared for one of the largest airborne assaults of the war. On September 17, 1944, aircraft from here took part in the initial wave, carrying elements of the 82nd Airborne Division across the English Channel and into the Netherlands. The airfield's strategic location and the efficiency of its ground crews helped ensure a rapid and coordinated departure, contributing significantly to the Allied effort to seize the key bridges and open a route into Germany. Despite the outcome of Market Garden, RAF Spano remains a symbol of the daring and ambition that characterized the operation. Today, let's take a moment to appreciate the aircraft we're flying in, the legendary C-47 Skytrain. It was known to the British forces as the Dakota. This twin-engine transport plane was the backbone of the Allied airborne operations during World War II. The C-47 was adapted from the civilian DC-3 and modified for combat roles, equipped with a reinforced flooring, jump lights, paratroop benches, and large cargo doors. Each plane could carry 28 fully equipped paratroopers or tow gliders loaded with troops and equipment. During Operation Market Garden, waves of C-47s flew from air bases across England and France, dropping thousands of men into the Netherlands. The 82nd and the 101st Airborne Divisions depended on them for their historic jumps over Oversteek, Grave, and Eindhoven. Crews often flew low and slow through flak-filled skies, navigating by landmarks and rudimentary instruments. Pilots and jump masters coordinated the drops by hand signals in their watches. There was no GPS, only nerves, skill, and timing. One pilot wrote in his journal, "You could hear the flak ping the fuselage and feel the tension rise. Then, green light, they jumped and we prayed." Operation Market Garden was devised primarily by British Field Marshal Bernard Law Montgomery. His goal was bold: use airborne forces to seize key bridges in the Netherlands and allow ground troops from the British XXX Corps to race north along a single road corridor, bypassing the heavily fortified Siegfried Line, and enter into Germany's industrial heartland. The plan combined 2 operations: Market, the airborne assault by U.S., British, and Polish paratroopers to seize the bridges, and Garden, the ground advance by tanks and mechanized infantry up the Eindhoven-Arnhem Road. The plan was approved by General Dwight D. Eisenhower, the Supreme Allied Commander. Eisenhower had been championing a so-called broad strategy, keeping Allied forces distributed along a wide front, putting pressure on German positions all along the entire border. When offensive progress began to slow following the liberation of Brussels in early September, Eisenhower gave the go-ahead to implement a smaller-scale version of Montgomery's plans for a narrow front. Today, we will be flying from here in southern England across the English Channel to the line of departure for the XXX Corps, north to Arnhem. Allied commanders hoped that if Market Garden was successful, they could end the war by Christmas of 1944. To carry out this ambitious strategy in Market Garden, a new formation was brought into action. the 1st Allied Airborne Army under Lieutenant General Louis Brereton. It included the U.S. 18 Airborne Corps, commanded by General Matthew Ridgway, with the 82nd Airborne Division and 101st Airborne Division alongside the 9th Troop Carrier Command. The 19th Airborne Division was held in reserve. It would be a lightning strike spearheaded by airborne troops dropping deep behind enemy lines to seize key bridges. Market Garden then assumed that the paratroopers could hold out long enough for the 30 Corps to reach them. The soil along this route was judged to be impassable for mechanized and heavy armor, so the 30 Corps would follow the single paved highway along the route. Our first location that we will be passing over is Lommel, Belgium. And on September 17, 1944, the British 30 Corps, the Guards Armored Division, and the Irish Guards, who was the lead column, began their journey right here for Operation Market Garden. And we begin our journey north today where Operation Market Garden began for 30 Corps, at what's known as Joe's Bridge, a vital crossing over the Bocholt-Herentals Canal in Lommel, Belgium. This bridge was seized days earlier by the Irish Guards and was named after Lieutenant Colonel Joe Vandeleur. He was the commanding officer of the 3rd Battalion of the Irish Guards that led the breakout of 30 Corps. On the morning of September 17, 1944, British tanks rolled out from here in what would become the most daring ground push of the war. Their mission? Race 100 kilometers up a single narrow road, later to be known as Hell's Highway, linking with the airborne troops holding bridges in the Netherlands. Lieutenant Colonel Joe Vandeleur was quoted as saying, "We're going to fight our way up that road fast, because if we stop, we're done." As we leave Lommel, Belgium, and head north, we'll travel along the route that 30 Corps traveled. Most of it is known as A50 now. A small section of it here is known as N69. During the Second World War, it was Highway 69, and this is the single paved road that 30 Corps traveled north on. Although the fighting was more intense along certain sections of the route, the highway itself basically became known as Hell's Highway. 30 Corps had a total manpower of approximately 50,000 to 60,000 troops. This included some frontline combat troops, support units, engineers, artillery, and the logistics personnel. There were approximately 22,000 vehicles in total, spread across multiple divisions and support units. It included 600 to 800 Sherman tanks and Fireflies, armored cars, Bren gun carriers, trucks, lorries, jeeps, half-tracks, artillery pieces that were towed, motorcycles and engineering vehicles, including bulldozers and bridging equipment.
Quite frankly, this kind of thing's never been attempted before.
Just where is this all going to take place?
Holland.
And when?
I'm coming to that now. Right. The ground forces. 30 Corps, commanded by General Horrocks, 20,000 vehicles, and this, as you know, is the German front line. Now, we're going to lay a carpet, as it were, of airborne troops over which 30th Corps can pass. We shall seize the bridges, it's all a question of bridges, with thunderclap surprise, and hold them until they can be secured.
We are now approaching Eindhoven, was the southernmost city in the operation, and our first airborne drop zone. Below us lies the territory where the U.S. 101st Airborne Division, the famous Screaming Eagles, landed on the morning of September 17th. Their mission was to capture 5 key bridges, including the crossing at Saône and Best. They successfully secured 3, but disaster struck at the canal bridge in Saône. The Germans blew it up just before the paratroopers reached it. This forced the Allied engineers to build a makeshift Bailey Bridge, delaying the armored column's advance by 36 critical hours. It was in this area where a crashed glider also handed German forces a complete set of Allied battle plans, giving them a deadly advantage. Though the 101st held their ground, their delay at Saône was the first sign that things weren't going according to the plan. The units involved in Eindhoven were the U.S. 101st Airborne Division, the British 30 Corps, and the German Kampfgruppe Walter. Eindhoven was the first major urban objective. The 101st Airborne, led by Major General Maxwell Taylor, landed early on September 17th and secured key bridges in the city. As mentioned, the bridge at Saône was blown up by the Germans, delaying 30 Corps. The 101st held the southern flank of Market Garden, clearing towns like Vekel and St. Odenrode, while engineers raced to build a Bailey Bridge at Saône. Private Paul Kennedy of the 101st Airborne said, "It was like something from a movie. church bells ringing as we rolled into town. But the war wasn't over, not by a long shot. As we continue north, we'll fly over Vekel and Grava, two strategic towns along the corridor. The 101st secured these locations and fended off repeated German counterattacks despite being stretched thin. In Grava, a key Maas River bridge was captured intact, but in Vekel, German forces repeatedly cut the narrow road between the bridges, slicing through the thin Allied corridor and isolating units. Here is where the vulnerability of the plan became clear. The entire ground operation depended on one narrow highway. Any ambush, blown bridge, or roadblock could unravel the mission, and that's exactly what began to happen. Between Eindhoven and Grava is where the 101st Airborne clashed with the German SS recon elements. These towns straddled the critical supply route. The 101st engaged in fierce firefights to clear roads and bridges of German defenses. Holding these positions was key to keeping the 30 Corps moving. Despite ambushes and artillery attacks, the Americans secured both towns, keeping the corridor intact.
Now, first of all, General Maxwell Taylor, Eindhoven. You take and hold the bridges there with the 101st. General Gavin, with your 82nd, you get Nijmegen. Take and hold the bridges. And Roy, you get the prize, Arnhem. Arnhem Bridge. And you hold it.
For how long?
Well, Monty assures me that 30 Corps will do the 63 miles in 2 days.
Here in Grava, where the U.S. 82nd Airborne Division, particularly the 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment, and the Germans guarding the bridges clashed. Just west of Nijmegen, this Maas River was spanned by one of Europe's longest road bridges. The 504th Regiment seized the Grava Bridge intact within hours of the drop. This was a crucial early success. Had the bridge been destroyed, the advance would have stalled entirely. Private Al Johnson said, "No time to think, just run for that bridge. They didn't expect us so soon, and we hit them hard and fast." And as we continue north, you can see N50, which is also part of the route, the single paved route that 30 Corps was traveling along north.
Yeah, they ought to be able to handle it.
Oh, I'm sorry. General Sosabowski, you go with your Polish brigade with Roy Elkins. I'm so sorry.
As we approach the area near Nijmegen, first we'll fly over the Oversteek Heights. This was the high ground that was essential for the Allies to take control of. From the drop zones here, the 505th and the 508th captured Oversteek Ridge overlooking the Reichswald Forest and the main road to Nijmegen. Here, American artillery had range over the entire region. The 300-foot plateau offered an excellent command of the surrounding flatlands. It was also the logistics hub. Oversteek Heights had the drop zone, the main logistics hub for the 82nd Airborne, and it was essential for resupply until 30 Corps could arrive. The position was fiercely contested by German counterattacks from the east. Private George Baker said parachutes filled the sky like snow, but once we hit the ground, it was hell.
Roy, when you've secured your bridge and 30th Corps have got across it, we can turn east, right into the industrial heart of Germany, the Ruhr. Once we control their factories, there's not very much they can do about it. And that is the plan. And we go next Sunday.
7 days.
Why not? The sooner we go, the better. We've got them on the run.
Now as we're entering Nijmegen, it's a major urban center and the site of one of the operation's most dramatic battles. On the afternoon of September 17th, the U.S. 82nd Airborne Division, under Brigadier General Jumpin' Jim Gavin, parachuted near Oversteek Heights, southwest of the city. As I mentioned, they secured the high ground and prepared for a German counterattack. But the prize was the Waal River Bridge, the last major crossing before Arnhem. Unfortunately, the 82nd didn't move quickly enough to secure it. By the time they attacked it on September 20th, German SS Panzer troops had dug in deep. To take the bridge, American paratroopers executed a legendary assault, rowing across the Waal under heavy fire in flimsy canvas boats. They stormed the north bank and attacked the German defenders from behind. It was successful, but it came at a terrible cost. Nearly 50 men died in the crossing, but the bridge was finally taken, and the British armor of 30 Corps rolled into Nijmegen 5 days late. Some of the units involved in the fighting in Nijmegen were the 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment of the 82nd Airborne, the British Guards Armored Division, and the German Fallschirmjäger Airborne Troops, and the 10th SS Panzer Division. Nijmegen held two key bridges, the Waal River Road Bridge and the Railway Bridge. German units, including the 10th SS Panzer, reinforced these positions with deadly efficiency. The American troops engaged in house-to-house fighting through city blocks backed by tank support from the British Guards Armored. Colonel Reuben Tucker of the 504th PIR said, "We fought for every window, every stairwell. Nijmegen bled for those bridges." As mentioned, this is where the Waal River crossing took place, a mission to get paratroopers across the Waal River so they could attack the bridge from the north, which at this point was defended by the German Fallschirmjäger troops. North of the river, this is the village of Lent. It saw brutal counterattacks as the Germans tried to reclaim the bridges. The Americans dug in on the north side while 30 Corps surged past. A paratrooper from the 504th was quoted as saying, "We weren't thinking about tomorrow, just holding our ground minute by minute." Today, the Oversteek Bridge spans the site, and each night, 48 lights illuminate in pairs, one for every man lost in the crossing. It took place on September 20th. It involved the 3rd Battalion of the 504th PIR. In broad daylight, 260 paratroopers crossed the river in 26 canvas boats under a storm of German gunfire. Half were killed or wounded in the first wave, but they reached the far bank and linked up with British tanks to seize the bridges. Lieutenant James Gavin said it was a mission that no commander wants to order, but they did it. God help them, they did it. Continuing our tour north towards the city of Arnhem, that'll be our final objective and the site of the operation's greatest tragedy. On the first day of the operation, September 17th, the British 1st Airborne Division dropped west of Arnhem, over 8 miles away from their target. And why so far? Well, the landing zones had to avoid flak batteries and forests, but that distance cost them valuable time. Their goal was to capture the Lower Rhine Bridge. Only one unit, the 2nd Battalion, under Lieutenant Colonel John Frost, made it to the objective. They reached the bridge and dug in, holding 18 buildings on the north side for 4 days. The rest of the division was delayed by German resistance, poor intelligence, and broken radios. Crucially, British commanders were unaware that 2 SS Panzer divisions were stationed nearby for refit. Those resting German units rapidly deployed to block reinforcements and surrounded Frost's men. Meanwhile, Major General Roy Urquhart, cut off from his command and lacking communications, spent over a day hiding in an attic in Oversteek. Despite fierce resistance, British units were eventually pushed into a tight pocket near Oversteek. Frost's battalion was overrun on September 21st. The Arnhem Bridge remained in German hands. By September 22nd, the division had shrunk from over 10,000 men to just 3,500, encircled and low on food, ammunition, and medical supplies. Still, they held out for 5 more days. To the south is Driel, where under heavy fire, the 1st Polish Independent Parachute Brigade finally dropped in on September 21st. Only half arrived due to bad weather. Around 300 brave Polish soldiers attempted to cross the Rhine to reinforce the British. Many drowned or were cut down by machine gun fire. Together, the British and the Polish held Oversteek until the night of September 25th-26th, when a final decision was made to evacuate. Under the cover of darkness and with artillery fire masking their retreat, the surviving 1st Airborne made it across the Rhine. Out of the original 10,000 British soldiers, about 2,100 escaped back across the Rhine. The rest were killed, wounded, or captured. The units involved in the fighting in Arnhem were the British 1st Airborne Division, the Polish 1st Independent Parachute Brigade, and the German 9th and 10th SS Panzer Divisions. It was Major General Urquhart who was quoted with saying, "We came within a hair's breadth, but it was a bridge too far." We will now head to our final destination today. We will be landing at the De Leen Air Base, once one of the most strategically important military airfields in the Netherlands. When the British airborne troops were evacuated across the Rhine on the night of the 25th and 26th, there were still paratroopers and air crews that were left behind. 130 of those stranded managed to escape and return to Allied lines about a month later in Operation Pegasus. Today's tour was from Joe's Bridge to Arnhem, the path of Operation Market Garden, and it was paved with bravery, sacrifice, and hard-earned lessons. What went right during Market Garden? The initial drops were accurate, and the early bridges at Grava, San, and Vekel were secured quickly. The 504th captured Grava Bridge intact. The Vaal River crossing at Nijmegen succeeded against immense odds. But what went wrong? The Arnhem Bridge was too far for the ground forces to reach in time. The single narrow road, Hell's Highway, was vulnerable to ambushes and delays. Weather delayed the resupply and glider reinforcements that were expected. Allied intelligence underestimated the German strength in the area. The SS Panzer divisions were regrouping in the Arnhem area, and although the local resistance had told the Allies that, they still underestimated the size. Communications between units was difficult and often broke down. The failure of the 82nd Airborne to secure the Nijmegen Bridge on day 1 of the operation delayed the 30 Corps' relief column 36 hours and is considered one of the several key reasons for the failure of the entire operation. Though courageous and partly successful, the operation ultimately failed to achieve its full objective, capturing the Rhine crossing at Arnhem. It would take many more months and heavy fighting before the Allies finally crossed the Rhine in 1945. In 1977, Richard Attenborough's film A Bridge Too Far brought Operation Market Garden to the big screen. Based on Cornelius Ryan's best-selling book, the film starred Sean Connery, Gene Hackman, and Anthony Hopkins, portraying the massive scope and tragedy of the operation. While the movie takes some creative liberties, condensing events and dramatizing characters, it remains remarkably faithful to the operation's major events. The Vaal River crossing, Nijmegen Bridge battle, and the Arnhem siege are recreated with historical equipment, locations, and even C-47 aircraft. Many veterans who saw the film praised its attention to detail, calling it the closest Hollywood had come to showing the chaos, courage, and missteps of Market Garden. The title itself, A Bridge Too Far, has become a lasting phrase in military history, symbolizing both ambition and hard-earned lessons. After Market Garden, the Allies still controlled the corridor of Dutch territory leading up to Nijmegen. The Allied bridgehead was a major threat to the German defenses. The area between the Rhine and the Vaal rivers became a new front line called the Island by the Allies. On September 25th, Hitler had ordered General Field Marshal Walter Model, commander of Army Group B, to destroy the Allies in the Arnhem-Nijmegen area. Model sent the 2nd SS Panzer Corps to attack the Allies between the Rhine and the Vaal rivers from the north and the east. The 10th SS Panzer Division was already battling the British on the island, so it was ordered to use the 9th and 116th Panzer Divisions for this fresh offensive. On September 27th, the 12th SS Corps assumed command of all German forces west of Arnhem. The German offensive would see all 3 Army Corps launch coordinated attacks to cut off and destroy the large Allied force at Nijmegen. A major objective was to capture and destroy the road bridge at Nijmegen that was originally captured by the 82nd Airborne during Market Garden. German air assaults and saboteurs damaged the railway bridge but failed to destroy the road bridge. The fighting continued there through October of 1944. The Germans assaulted with tanks and infantry, and they were met with dug-in British infantry battalions, artillery support, and local counterattacks. The German casualties were heavy. The British used their air superiority to disrupt German reinforcements. On October 7th, U.S. bombers collapsed the Arnhem Road Bridge, preventing further German tank movements. The German counteroffensive was over, the Allies had held, but both sides suffered heavy losses. It was only in April of 1945 that the Allies would finally cross the Rhine at Arnhem, when British and Canadian forces pushed the weakened German defenders back. Today, the landscape at Nijmegen and Arnhem is dotted with moving memorials that honor those who fought and died here. The Oversteek Bridge features a daily sunset march where veterans and citizens walk as 48 pairs of streetlights illuminate one by one, each representing a soldier lost during the Vaal crossing. Nearby, the National Liberation Museum in Groesbeek offers exhibits on the airborne landings and Dutch resistance. In Oversteek, the Airborne Museum Hartenstein preserves the history of the British 1st Airborne Division's stand at Arnhem. At the Arnhem-Oversteek War Cemetery, thousands of Allied soldiers rest. They lay silent witness to the cost of the liberation of the Netherlands, as do those that are buried at the Jonkebos War Cemetery in Nijmegen.